everyone, I'm Jess. I'm a psychologist. I mainly work with adult survivors of trauma, childhood trauma, but I do more teaching and supervision of students these days who are early career in the psychology field. So I've come to talk to you today about stress management and work-life balance. So, stress is when your demands outweigh your resources. So your demands might be work deadlines, managing relationships, looking after the family, looking after your health, getting enough vegetables every day, versus resources. So time, money, energy, sleep, resiliency. So, as you probably all here because you lead stressful, busy lives, I imagine. So you might be kind of juggling all that, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you can kind of cope, but then something else big happens. So maybe you have to go through a legal proceeding or an unexpected bill, or something big comes up at work and it kind of just, you lose all your balls. It all becomes a bit messy. I guess the other side of this is internal pressures we can also put on ourselves, things like perfectionism, control, or desire for achievement. So, how do you guys know when you're stressed? What are some of your symptoms? Anger? Yep. Sleep? Yep. Or lack thereof? Yep.
Just irritated.
Grumpy? Yep. So we're going to start with mild stress. Now, technically, this is supposed to be tolerable for a short period of time type of stress. So for some people, it's difficulties getting to sleep or having a really restless sleep, waking up a lot, feeling a bit shaky, jittery, agitated, on edge, maybe some more heart palpitations you might notice, neck, back, shoulder tension, and maybe some headaches associated with that, and some changes in appetite. So maybe you lose your appetite, or maybe you notice you tend to eat more junk food or sometimes food. And digestive disturbances. So maybe you're getting a lot of diarrhea or nausea or indigestion. Moderate stress looks a bit more intense. So maybe you start to become quite reactive emotionally. So quick to anger, quick to crying. You're losing your concentration. Feeling disorganized, 8 things on the go at once. Or feeling really overwhelmed by, say, your to-do list. Loss of motivation. So maybe you start feeling like you really can't be bothered anymore. And maybe you're still engaged in work, but you start to withdraw in social activities or at home, or vice versa. And maybe you start to get the kinds of headaches or migraines that you need medication for them to go away. Okay, and then there's severe stress. So this is what we want to avoid. So when people are under a great deal of intense stress for a great deal of time, sometimes this can result in problems like infections or ulcers, or they might start developing some allergies. An increased desire to escape. So people might think about just quitting their job, walking out one day, or leaving their relationship. Or sometimes fantasizing about an illness that makes you just sick enough to be in hospital but you won't die, just so you can get a break. That's a really common one. Or it can get to the point of more suicidal thoughts as well. So essentially what's happening is your mind's trying to problem solve. It's kind of come up with a solution to the stress, and that is to flee, to run away from it. You might find you get a bit hypersensitive to light or noise. You might find, I guess, a bit more of a significant personality change. So the people around you might start to notice and say, you're different, you've changed, you're not happy anymore, you never want to be with me anymore. You might find yourself relying on substances to cope, alcohol, other drugs, caffeine. And that can sometimes get like cyclical, so you have 6 coffees to stay awake and then a lot of drinks at night to get to sleep. And sometimes can result in more severe mental illness like depression or an anxiety disorder. I'll come back to how do we deal with that. But in terms of what's happening in your body when you're stressed. So back in the day when we were cavemen and cavewomen, we needed a really quick way to deal with threats in our environment. So you've probably heard of the fight or flight response. Animals have it too. It's a whole system of changes in our body that helps us to either run away or fight off threat. So the first thing that happens is our breathing changes, and we might start to get very shallow breath, tight in our chest, or heart starts beating faster. All the blood is going into our big muscles to get us ready to run or fight. So you might find you get tingly or numb in your fingers or toes. You might feel that muscle tension in your shoulders. Or you might start feeling a bit shaky and a bit jittery. All our digestion shuts down because you don't need to eat when you're dealing with a threat, hence the nausea, diarrhea, vomiting. Also dry mouth. So I guess the point was it was supposed to be over really quickly. You either survive or you die, basically. The problem these days is that the system hasn't evolved to deal with our current stresses. So our stresses these days are long term. They're not over in a second. They're ongoing, weeks, months, years. And some people can be in fight or flight for weeks, months, years. If you're prone to fight, then you're probably prone to getting angry or irritable when you're stressed. If you're prone to flight, you might be someone who is more avoidant when under stress. Maybe needing a personal day. If you're someone who freezes, you might kind of just shut down and go numb. So this can look different depending on who you are, but some people it might be that kind of disengagement from their relationships. Now, that's animals. Humans or mammals also have some other coping responses, other ways of surviving. One way is to submit, as in try and make everyone happy. Try and be a good girl or a good boy. Sacrifice your needs and make sure everyone's happy to relieve your stress. It works a little bit, doesn't work for you though. Attachment, well, sometimes this is about us depending on someone else to help us cope with stress. It can be helpful, or can lead to more problems as well. So if we're depending on the wrong person or we're not depending on ourselves. It depends what you've learnt growing up as a way to survive. Yeah. So for some people, they might have learnt you're not allowed to be angry, so they're not really fighters. They submit or they run away. Some people might learn anger is the only way. Nothing else works. So it just depends on what you've learnt to cope. You might be a fighter except when you're talking to the police. Then you submit. And that might be a good way to survive, you know. So it can really depend on the situation too. Actually, a little bit of stress is functional. It helps us. And actually, humans are really good at coping with a little bit of stress. In fact, it's kind of stimulating for us. just a little bit makes us happy. Now I'm talking about like stimulation at work, a challenge at work, something that excites you, or it might be working on something with a family member and having a good outcome. That gives you a sense of achievement. Little bit is okay. Chronic stress is when we can run into problems. So this is when we have ongoing stress without any periods of recovery. So any chance to come out of fight or flight. So that type of stress is like your moderate to severe stress over a long time, and it's associated with burnout. Burnout is when essentially your body can no longer keep going. You won't recover, so it shuts down for you. It says, okay, if you're not going to take a rest, I'm going to make you rest. So that can look different for different people. Sometimes it's a physical shutdown, sometimes it's a emotional or mental health shutdown. It used to be called breakdowns. So some people it might be they develop chronic fatigue. Some people it might be they develop depression. Either way, your body is trying to get you to recover because you haven't been able to take a break for various reasons. So when people get to the burnout stage, they need a long time to recover. So like at least 6 months, maybe a year, maybe longer. It's associated with suppression of the immune system, so it can lead to other physical health difficulties, or it can increase your risk of developing a chronic disease. So with extreme stress like PTSD, trauma, it can suppress the immune system for up to 10 years after the initial trauma or event. So, not trying to put the fear of God in you, but this is why it's important to rest and recover. So, how to cope with stress. We regularly need periods of recovery. Now, that can look like daily, weekly, or longer periods like holiday periods. So, for example, university students, really intense periods of stress for 3 months, big long holiday to recover. So most of the time that's tolerable, that people can cope with that. Okay, so it looks different for different people. Some people relax by not doing anything. Some people relax by doing something, but doing something fun. Depends what's going to work for you. I guess the hard part will be scheduling it into your busy lives, which we'll get to. You're right, yeah. You're absolutely right. It actually takes 4 weeks for the brain to reset. You need a 4-week holiday all at once. How often do we get that? Rarely, but if you can get to 3 weeks even, that's a big help. In terms of managing that stress, it depends on whether your stresses are external or internal. So we're going to look at each one to see if I can give you some tips and strategies. Your external stresses are more things that are mostly out of your control. So maybe it's a work deadline, maybe it's a person at work that you have to work with. Might be legal proceedings, it might be something's happened with your health that you're limited in terms of how much you can manage. So most of the time, external is out of our control. Internal, on the other hand, are certain beliefs or values we might have that can increase or decrease our stress levels depending on how we manage them. So these are things like fear of failure, the need to achieve, perfectionism, the need for approval, the need for control, and catastrophizing. The thing about the internal ones is, if you're good at performing or achieving, you probably need some of those to do that. So it's one of those catch-22s where sometimes the more competent you are, the more stressed you get. In terms of managing external stresses, now lots of this is easier said than done. I'll give you the ideas anyway. So scheduling in periods of recovery is really important. How you do that depends a bit on what you tell yourself about that. Do I have time, or is it allowed, or surely I've got to prioritise other things? And sometimes it's a bit to do with other people, like say colleagues or bosses, or what your workplace culture is. But anyway, the aim would be to schedule in those recovery periods and have really strict boundaries around that. So you know, psychologists are always like, time's up. That's the end of the session. We don't go over the hour. We do sometimes, but you know, the point of all that is to enforce a really strict boundary so we can continue to do the job. Same thing with your workplaces. Obviously it depends on where you work, but if you can make a end time that you stick to, no matter what, or 90% of the time, or even one day a week where you leave at that time and you go off to do your recovery or your relaxation. So sometimes it requires a bit of negotiating in your head. Sometimes it requires assertiveness. Sometimes it's got to work around other things, but the more you can set that boundary and stick to it, the more manageable your stress will be. So sometimes it might be around you never get your to-do list done, you just keep prioritising things. So some people might say, okay, well, I'm not going to leave work until I tick off my whole to-do list. Nope, you leave work at the same time, no matter what you've got done. And really, a whole bunch of research really backs that up, that people are more, I guess their performance is way better in short periods of time than over, say, 12 or 14 hours. Really good. That idea of routine is really helpful too. So you might have your end work time, and then as you're driving home, it's like your decompression time where you reflect on your day. But once you're home, that's it. Work's at work, and I'm just going to focus on my rest and recovery. And I'm going to worry about work tomorrow, again, at work. Okay. Another one might be around learning how to say no. So this might be around assertiveness, or it might be about asking for help or delegating. So, for example, let's say your boss gives you a huge project, right? I want that done by the end of the week, and you know there's no way you can do that without not sleeping for 5 days. Say, look, I really want to get this done. I'm just not sure it's achievable. Is there any room for movement here? Can we get someone else on the project to help with it? Can you give me another week, because I think it'll take this much time? You know, so you start to kind of negotiate and let people know. Because again, the problem with you doing it in that week is you'll be asked to do it again. So it won't be a temporary no sleep week. Again, depends on how receptive your management is to that. Asking for help, so asking for help from colleagues, or it might be asking for help at home. So I've got a really big deadline coming up. Do you mind if you cook the dinners this week, and then I'll cook them once the deadline's passed for the next week? You know, so a bit of negotiating in your relationships as well, or even just letting people know that you're not going to be 100% while that stress is going on. Sleep hygiene is things like getting to bed at the same time every day and waking up at the same time every day. Having a period away from your screens before bed, of say half an hour. Not drinking or having caffeine just before bed. So these are all just things around how to have the best sleep possible. You might have values around being a good family member, partner or parent. You might have values around being a productive team member at work. You might have values around helping people. You might have values around being a productive member of society. Whatever it might be, what can be helpful is to figure out what your number one is. Number two, number three, number four. And then it can help when it comes to prioritizing. So if you're torn between saying no to the boss, and saying no to your partner, and you think partner's more important to me in terms of my values, it might just help make that decision a bit easier if you know for sure they're number one, they're number two. Rather than trying to be the good boy or good girl and please everybody. Okay. Now, if they're, again, short-term external stresses, they're probably okay, manageable. If they're really ongoing, something big might need to happen. I'm talking like a change of job, basically, or a big change in your life. So that's a good one just to consider is, do I need a bigger solution? Is this really not going to go away until something major happens? I'm just going to run through some helpful ideas with you. Things to start your thinking about managing these internal stresses. So where these ideas come from and what you can say to yourself about them. So when it comes to a fear of failure, often we're expecting ourselves to be perfect straight away. Really, that's a bit to do with our culture as well. It really is okay to be a beginner. In fact, it takes 10 years to become an expert at any skill. So why should we expect you to be perfect after a month or after a year? So if you can come back to the idea of like it's okay to be learning, or mistakes are for learning, it's okay to be a beginner, then this might cause you a little less stress, this one. Even if you do fail, most people you talk to who've gone through a significant failure in their life will also tell you how much they learnt from that experience and what it gave them later, once they're through it, once they've processed it. The need to achieve. So achievements are great. They probably help you get a lot of good things in your life. The problem comes when people, basically, the bar keeps getting higher. So as soon as they achieve one goal, it's like, that doesn't matter anymore because there's another new goal for me to reach. Now, something to consider here is that you are perfectly acceptable just the way you are. That you were born worthy. Achievements are great, but you don't need to be keeping on pushing yourself to prove your worth. Perfectionism. So this one is good if you can just shift it from 100% to 85%. So relax the standard on yourself by 15%. What's good enough? So often when people are prone to perfectionism, they think if they relax that standard, it'll go to like zero. Like, I'll be homeless on the street, my family will leave me, terrible catastrophic things will happen if I'm not 100% perfect at everything. Obviously that's really unlikely and unhelpful. Usually if you just take your pressure off just a little, no one else will notice except you. You'll notice because you're feeling a whole lot less stressed, but actually most people won't bat an eyelid. Fear of negative evaluation, criticism, judgment. So nobody likes criticism. You don't have to like criticism. We're not meant to. It really stings. But you might be better at coping with it than what you think. I keep losing my mic, sorry. So let's say you think I must be perfect because I don't want anyone to be upset with me. You can start to reflect and think, well, is that true? Like if someone's upset with me, how am I going to cope with that? What's going to happen? Or you might get kind of the really toxic criticism, like you're stupid, that was terrible, etc. So you might like to ask yourself, should I pay attention to this or should I dismiss it? If someone's calling me stupid and terrible, I should probably just dismiss it. I mean, and I guess that's where the stresses will become traumatic or toxic, where you can try everything you can stress management wise, you can work on the internal stuff, the external stuff, but unless they go away, it's not going to change anything. So I agree there's a bigger problem around that I don't have the answers to. Other ones might be the need for control. So when you're having a think about this, again, often you've probably learnt to survive by becoming controlling. Now, it might be other people, or it might be just your own space or your own self. It can manifest in different ways. But you might start to think about, well, what do I actually think will happen if I let go of control in this area? What's this bad thing that I think will happen? And will it actually happen? And maybe can I experiment a bit? Can I just let go just a little bit and see what happens? And then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. Often the more we try and control things, the more it fails, basically, and the more we let go, the easier it can become. The other thing to consider is, let's say you're trying to control someone else. So let's say you're a bit of a micromanager in the workplace. That can have a bit of a negative effect on others. And if you're going to experiment with that, you might try and give people a little bit more autonomy and see what happens. And you might find really positive things start to happen. The need for approval. So we all like praise. We all really enjoy it. When we're children, I think I said before in the last one, I don't know, I can't quite remember if it's children receive between 2 or 4 minutes of praise per day. When we're adults, nothing, basically. Could be nothing. Could be nothing for a really long time before we hear someone say, good job, or you did really well at that. So if we're not getting it through others, sometimes we can do it for ourselves. So you can start to think, well, I'm really proud of myself. I did this today. Or I think I did really well in that area. Or I just went through this really difficult thing and it was okay. So next one's around suppressing emotions. So we're really not meant to be happy all the time. We're not really wired that way. If we think we're meant to be happy all the time, it can cause us to push down all the negative stuff, all the negative feelings we have. So if you can find a way to process them, that will help with your stress. Humans process through talking. So that's why the talking cure, psychology, is helpful, or counselling. But this can just be with friends or partners, co-worker. You might schedule in a wine Wednesday where you go out to dinner with your co-workers and talk through everything that's happened. And then catastrophizing. So often we think this will be the worst outcome ever and it'll affect my life always. You can start to challenge that idea by kind of asking yourself, okay, well, is this going to matter to me next week? Yes or no? Okay, yes. Is it going to matter to me next year? Yes or no? What about in 5 years' time? So that can just help bring you back to the idea that this might not be something that'll stress you out forever. Now, these are just little ideas. Obviously, if you're finding ongoing stress that you're struggling to manage, might be helpful to go deeper into therapy. The contagion effect. So anxiety is really contagious, and to give you an example, so let's say in the therapy space someone comes in as suicidal to a health professional team, and everyone in that team starts getting really worried and really stressed, and we've got to do something about it now. Everyone's worried this person is going to end their life. Now, reasonable to be worried, but if you're feeling distressed enough to feel suicidal, it's not going to look good or help you if everyone around you, or the so-called professionals, are also getting stressed and worried. So you're limited in terms of how much you can do for the contagion effect, except to be as calm as possible around that person. Because the anxiety is contagious, but so is that calming, soothing effect. Now, I'm not saying you'll be able to cure their anxiety, but you might be able to help calm them down by remaining calm. And some of that might be about how their particular coping style. So some people might gravitate toward, if they're anxious, towards another anxious person because it feels validating. This person's anxious too, as opposed to invalidating. Whereas someone might be like, no, I need a calm person to help regulate and soothe me. That is, yeah, I didn't put that up there. So responsibility, or over-responsibility, if you like, or could be also thought of as self-sacrifice. So this is like your submission, good boy, good girl, make everyone happy. If everyone else is happy, I'm happy. Learnt through various experiences. I guess with all of this, so important to put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. So the more you're looking after yourself, the more you'll have to give to everyone around you. And I guess it can be difficult. People might start to feel guilty, like, oh, is it okay for me to put myself first or take time for myself? It's definitely okay. It'll help everyone else. If you're the happier you are, the happier everyone else will be, not the other way around. And just start by noticing the sounds you can hear around you, inside the room or outside the room. Just noticing each one in turn. And then I want you to start to focus inwards on your breathing. Just noticing the breath as it passes through your nostrils, down the back of your throat, into your chest and out again. See if you can start to slow down your breathing. Draw the breath right down into your belly. Then I want you to focus in on the toes of your left foot. Just noticing each one in turn, how they're feeling, whether they're warm or cool, or heavy or light, or maybe no sensations at all. Notice your left foot, left lower leg, left upper leg. Notice any areas of tension. And then just mentally imagine your whole left leg and foot becoming very relaxed and heavy. All the tension melting away. Swapping over to your right toes, right foot, right lower leg, right upper leg. Noticing any sensations, any tension. And then just mentally imagining it all flowing out with the out breath. All your tension melting away. Moving up to your stomach, lower back, upper back, shoulders and chest. Noticing any areas of tension. Notice how these areas are feeling. And then just allowing all that tension to melt away. Moving to your fingers and hands, lower arms, upper arms. Noticing any sensations. And then just allowing it all to flow out with the out breath. Moving to your neck, back of the head, forehead and forehead, face, jaw, tongue. Noticing any sensations, any tension. And then just allowing it to all melt away. Picturing your whole body now, whole body relaxed. And just enjoying this moment. Just coming back to your breathing now. Start to notice the sounds you can hear around you. Your back in the chair, your feet on the floor. Give your fingers and toes a bit of a wiggle. And then whenever you're ready, just opening your eyes. All right. How was that one for people? So the belly breathing you can do any time. The body scan is good meditation before bed. Thank you very much.